Escape from Tarkov's PVE mode has been out for quite a while, but it's only recently became available to every single person who purchases the game as an additional DLC upgrade that everyone can buy. But today's video is going to be talking about should you even consider buying the PVE mode and why some people would consider buying it versus whether you play PvP exclusively at the minute and you're thinking, maybe I should try out this mode for a variety of different reasons. And there are some reasons why even a staunch PvP player may actually want to pick up this game or at least this DLC to Escape from Tarkov. So we'll get into that within this video. If you're interested in seeing more videos on Escape from Tarkov, be sure to subscribe down below. But most importantly, like the videos. It helps it grow and expand to more people, and let me know if you want me to change anything about the videos. Either way, jumping straight into this video. So there's quite a few different things that I want to talk about within this, and I guess the first thing is, how does the gameplay actually feel? Because at the end of the day, you have to play the game and it has to feel somewhat decent when you do decide to jump into the PvE zone and play the game. And overall, gameplay wise, it is exactly the same in terms of how you fight and your engagements with the kind of actual gameplay style of the game. However, there are some considerable differences when you consider that most things are AI within the game. And AI being how they are within current mode or current version of the game is not particularly the most intuitive. It is not particularly the most difficult, but in some cases it's extremely difficult to the point where it becomes almost unfair. And this is where I think the main problems come with regards to the gameplay. It's not necessarily that the game is hard. I think that for most people you can quite easily do all of the tasks over time. But the problem is that the AI within the game basically are very, very good at being able to tap you over a very short period of time and remove you from the game once they do spot you, which becomes almost inevitable at some point during your PvE journey that you get spotted where you don't notice them, and then they fire one round, they fire two rounds, and then you're gone. And this is predominantly a big issue when it comes to bushes and trees, foliage, and also when there are obstacles in between you and the AI. The AI don't care about whether there's a bush in between you and them. There is not really any kind of negative impact of them when they basically can see you through a bush, whereas you, obviously as a real player and as someone that needs to actually see what you're trying to fire at least to a simple degree. I mean, you can go through, like, fire into a bush, but you don't exactly know where they are. The AI know where you are, and that's just simply how the game is designed. That once they target you after a certain period of time, they become more accurate, and then they're going to be more deadly to you if they do actually manage to fire off rounds. So when you combine that with the fact that the AI at the moment is not particularly the greatest, and the fact that the game is quite new, this can feel a bit daunting for a lot of players. However, once you realise the common kind of AI tropes that are within Escape from Tarkov and how they maneuver and how they move, it's really not too difficult. A lot of it is primarily just waiting for them to push you, because the AI now do push you, they will push towards you, and as long as you're kind of holding angles and you're not just running into a building hoping that no one is going to be there, you can usually have a decent engagement with the AI and it doesn't feel too bad. So from a gameplay perspective, it feels okay in terms of the combat system, but it isn't the best, and certainly the game is pretty early on in its development cycle. It's only recently been released, and certainly since the recent AI updates, there will be more, hopefully, with the introduction of mods and this sort of stuff later on down the line when the game is fully released. I think that the AI itself will become much better, and I'm sure that some absolute brain boxes out there are going to come up with some amazing ways to change the AI to be dynamic and more interesting and more effective, and simulate a real player a lot easier than what we currently have in the game, which really doesn't simulate a player at all, to be honest. And so with that in mind, the game still feels good. I enjoy playing the mode. It is a similar experience to PvP, but it isn't particularly the most enjoyable when it comes to once you've kitted out your character with the best gear. Often you can use that gear to essentially negate most AI, albeit bosses are still bosses and they have the very, very good accuracy, and of course they can beam you very easily, but at the end of the day, the general AI within the game, not particularly too much to worry about, and it works as intended, I think, at the moment. So hopefully they'll improve that and it will get better over time. So from that standpoint, I think the game is okay. It's definitely playable, and I'm certainly sure that most people won't have too much of a difficulty when it comes to dealing with the AI as they are in the game, apart from maybe a couple of times where you just get one shot or something like that. But in terms of extra bits and bobs with regards to the gameplay, the loot, this is something we have to talk about. Previously, the loot was absolutely insane. It was everywhere. There was loot just scattered about the map, and since the recent changes to essentially the when a load of bugs came out that you could go into raids with like no AI, BSG decided that they'll just nerf all of the loot within every single one of the maps, reduce the amount of spawns. I don't think they actually necessarily reduced what type of loot that you're getting, but they definitely reduced the overall volume of loot on every single one of the maps, to the point where it feels somewhat similar to if you've ever played the practice mode and gone in on your own. It feels that kind of loot, which is far too low in my opinion, and considering that there are other PMCs which can actually take stuff out of the raid now with the most recent updates to the AI themselves, is not the best in the game, and I think that there could definitely be some buffs to it. Does it need to be as good as it previously was? I think that's up for debate, and I don't want to say that it has to be or it's better now, because at the end of the day it's all subjective and depends on how you view the game. If you want to have way more loot, maybe there should be an option for that, but I don't think that having an option for the amount of loot is going to be the best way of doing it. It would be better to have a harder game mode, gives you more loot spawns, but of course it's harder, the AI are better. A normal game will just have normal amounts of loot, and then an easier mode will have like lower amounts of loot, so you know you could scale it dependent on what you want, and the game gets harder or more dynamic when you play, depending on how much loot you want to get. So that's one thing. Loot at the minute, pretty bad. For the most part, it's much worse than PvP at the moment, or at least seemingly. Don't have any statistics or anything like that. I'm sure BSG do, but they haven't given it to us, the player base, so nothing we can really comment on. It just feels that way, and yeah, a little bit sucky at the moment, and definitely trying to do some of your tasks is just a bit of a pain with the reduced loot spawn, especially if you're trying to hunt one specific item, so that is a bit of a negative, but hopefully that will change, and over time I'm sure there will be super high volumes of loot at periods of time, and then super low volume of loot in other times, which is currently where we're at. But then we have the longevity replayability. Is the game actually going to keep you hooked in, or is it just going to be one of those fads that you try out for a week and decide, nah, this is not really for me? Well, I think that this comes down to the fact that it depends on what your motivations of playing the PVE mode is. If you are a casual Escape from Tarkov player, not that very many people would be deemed casual in most games when playing Tarkov. Essentially, when it comes to playing the actual game, it is not really down to the, I guess, difficulty of the mode. It's more about how much time do you have to spend versus everyone else that's playing the PvP mode. And if you're a very kind of on and off player, then the PvE mode might be the way for you to play, and it often opens up a way of playing that you don't have possible when you do play the PvP mode, because you don't need to use all of the meta weapons. You can try out the game in a wide variety of ways, which I think is definitely a benefit to a lot of people in the game. It's now down to you to choose how you want to play, what you want to do, and not necessarily kind of forced into doing the best and most optimal way of picking up things within the raids and going for certain tasks. You can go off for 50 raids and not do a single task, or you can go in every single raid and do a task, or do multiple tasks per raid to try and get yourself towards Kappa. Or maybe you're just going to go and farm a load of bosses because you want to practice for when you play the PvP mode. And I think from that standpoint, the game has that feature that will always be there, that you can go in and test how you want to play Tarkov and then maybe transfer that over to the PvP mode, which is where I think a lot of the more veteran players and stuff like that will be using the PVE mode if they do decide to purchase it. Because not only that, is that because the PVE and the PvP are tied together with the updates that come to Tarkov, what we'll most likely see is when they introduce new weapons, they'll be available in both modes at the exact same time, which allow you to play PVE to test out that weapon and get a good gist of how it works. Is it actually a good weapon, before maybe you do all of the tasks to complete it on your PvP account. So it's a way of kind of going in and testing out the new stuff that comes into the game, as well as also, you know, always being there, because the game mode itself does not wipe. You can wipe your character, that's down to you, but it is not forced upon anyone. There are no permanent wipes to the PVE mode, so you could go on for 5 years or something on the PVE mode without wiping your character, but obviously that's down to you. And at any time or any given point, you can go, you know what, I think I'm going to go all the way back to 0 and start all over again, which you can do. It's on the Tarkov website. You can go in and you can reset your PVE account without actually having to reset your PvP account. So that's one way that you can do it in the game, and that gives you the opportunity to maybe try different types of accounts, different characters, although I think in the long run there will be the ability to actually have multiple different characters that you can play on PvE. I think that that would be a very, very good thing to have into the game, where you could have a bear, you could have a USEC, or maybe you could have a hardcore account where you're not allowed to use the flea at all. This is the sort of stuff that I think would be great and will, you know, help out the player base that want to play the game but don't have the time to spending 1,000, 3,000, 4,000 hours in order to keep up with some of the best players within the PvP mode and have a similar sort of experience in the PvE mode, which I think is what the target audience of it is. And if you're not that target audience, or you don't care about testing out new stuff, then maybe the game mode isn't for you, which I think is perfectly fair. I mean, from my perspective, I wasn't sure if I was going to actually play the PvE mode. I didn't know whether I'd enjoy it, and actually having played the majority of my hours within the PvP mode, I actually really enjoy the kind of more casual nature of PvE and being able to even play music at some points whilst you're playing Tarkov, which is a completely weird experience, considering that if you play music when you're playing PvP, it's horrendous, and is probably one of the worst things that you can do. And although it is a hindrance on PvE, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, play how you want to play, and if it means that you're not going to be the best you could possibly be, it still doesn't really make much of a difference, and you can always turn your music off anyway at any point. So that is something that I found very nice to have, and watch maybe a YouTube video whilst you're playing and that sort of stuff. It gives a more free approach to playing the game, which, if that sounds like something that you'd like to have every now and again, then yeah, I think the mode itself is definitely worth the €20, and I would quite happily say it's absolutely not worth €40 or €50 or anything really above €25. I think BSG actually did us a favour with the €20, although I would have loved to have seen this just included in the base package of the game. I see why they've implemented a cost, because of course they've developed it, that sort of stuff, but I think that that would be something that we'll see when 1.0 goes live, where the whole game is now sold for a individual price, which will include the PvE mode. I think that might be something that they will do in the future, where you pay £60 or £70 and you get everything for the game all in one go. but unsure as of currently, and it's only speculation, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much in this video. But yeah, I think that the price itself is not too much of a sticking point for a lot of players, and the amount of hours you're going to spend playing the game is far better than spending an hour down the pub and probably spending the exact same money, if not more. So I always weigh up my kind of things in terms of how much hours are you going to get. I know some people don't do that, and they just think I'm taking the moral stance that I've already paid for the game and I shouldn't have to pay any more. But for me, I've spent like 1,500 hours on Tarkov, so spending £20 for another 400, 500 hours potentially, you know, weigh that up in the amount of hours you play, and you're probably spending like 20p an hour or something like that, which the amount of enjoyment you get out of it is far beyond the cost. But of course that depends on where you are, how much money you earn, and I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of your own financial situation, but make of that what you will. So either way, now we come on to the kind of character progression, and of course we touched on the fact that you can play how you want to play, but it really is much more open to playing in the way that you want to play. And why I enjoyed it specifically is I can go in and I can use a one-shot pistol and be able to go round and dump into a load of people. I can practice my aim. I can decide that, you know what, I'm going to go in and try and hatchet run everyone. And come out with the gear that I want, or maybe I create my own hardcore and go in and do and essentially work on, you know, a hardcore account that's not necessarily within the game normally, but you can play it in that way. And I think that this is something that's definitely a positive and is far easier to do on the PVE mode than it is on the PvP. I'm currently in the process of setting up a way that everyone can kind of have a tracker for a hardcore account and a variety of different challenges and stuff like this that hopefully I'll release to everyone, and everyone can have the ability to use. It's going to be just a spreadsheet, but it will be kind of integrated with macros and that sort of stuff. That are within the spreadsheet, not on your game, don't worry. But it would just essentially have a variety of different tasks, and you can kind of assign what you want to do, whether you want to have so many unlocks, and in order for you to actually use medical items you have to then complete tasks that are specific to kind of the hardcore task system that I'll be putting into it. Then yeah, eventually we'll be showing it off in the hardcore series that we're doing on the channel, and yeah, I'll make it public once I feel like it's a bit more of a finished product, because at the minute it's just in basic kind of stage. And yeah, hopefully that'll be something interesting for people to try out and give me some feedback on, and I'll make improvements as and when I can to try and make it better and give you more options to kind of have a system where you can build your own rule set, and you can have a variety of different tasks and ways in which you want to play, unlocks and stuff like that, in order to purchase assault rifles, or maybe you have to deal so much damage or something like this. You know, all of this sort of stuff can be a nice new way to play, and that's something I've been enjoying in the game, so I thought I'd add that in there. And yeah, it's a really great way of being able to do it with very minimal risk, and yeah, it's just a super fun thing to do. So overall, I think we'll draw it to conclusion here, is that I think the PVE mode is probably one of the better purchases that you can make within Tarkov if you want to have a more free experience, and one that is more kind of suited to people that aren't going to be playing a ton of Escape from Tarkov. Someone that might jump on for a couple of days every single week and play for a couple of hours each time, and also someone that maybe doesn't want to have to grind out tons of tasks, or someone that wants to test things out. I think that this is the sort of mode that this actual experience kind of is tailored to, but I don't think it's there as a competitive way of playing the game and having a really competitive experience, because at the minute the AI aren't particularly that great and there's no real customization. So from that standpoint, at the moment, it probably wouldn't be worth it if you're after a real challenge within the game. So you have to make your own challenges up if you want to do that within the mode itself. So is it worth €20? I think it probably is, and I wouldn't say that normally, as to a lot of the DLCs that come out on a lot of games, but the value proposition is there. You know, you pay 20 euros and you have access to the mode and you can play however you want to play, and I'm sure you will have tons more hours than you will have paid per pound. So yeah, you could quite easily get yourself 100-200 hours worth of gameplay out of 20 euros, which, when you consider the price of some of new player games that we have, like Call of Duty, where you probably play for a week and it's gone forever basically after the next Call of Duty comes out the following year, and you've paid 80 quid for it, plus there's a load of battle passes. You know, I think that it's not too terrible. So I think the price point was actually fair from BSG, and I think that it wasn't too bad. So yes, I think it is kind of worth it if you fall within the category that we talked about in this video. And yeah, there you go. Hopefully it was an enjoyable video to actually watch or hear or find informative, or just a general overview of my own opinions on the game and whether I felt like it was worth it to recommend it to you guys, because if I didn't think it was worth it, I would not be making videos on it, and I certainly wouldn't be trying to showcase what the game and the game mode in particular is all about. So with that being said, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe down below if you want to see some more, and we'll be moving on to some more guides and tips and stuff coming for Escape from Tarkov in general in the upcoming videos. So thank you very much. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.